All right. Final countdown happening here. Very cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to jump in to join our Facebook live stream on the Del Valley Blast, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. How's it going, Leslie? Oh, I think you're on mute.
This always happens. If you hear a lot of birds and chickens, I'm doing good, first of all. If you hear a lot of birds and chickens, I actually live on a ranch.
Nice.
So that's them saying hi.
They want to tune in too and learn more about the census. It's great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and give everyone just about one more minute to hop on, and then we'll get started on today's conversation around the census, why it's important and why it matters.
Plays J Balvin in the background.
Hey, that'd be great. You see that Univision has a Cuenta Conmigo song. Have you seen that?
Yes, the one with Ana Barbara and a whole bunch of other art. The song is so good and catchy.
So good. I wish they had it on iTunes because I went to look for it and I couldn't find it on iTunes. You have to like log on to their website to listen to it. So.
Okay, yeah, I found it on Spotify.
Oh, oh, maybe I need to check Spotify.
It's on YouTube.
There we go. Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive right in. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Fuentes, and good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm happy to be here as a moderator for the Del Valley Community Coalition and the Del Valley Blast, and hosting our second ever Facebook Live session. And today, our special guest is Leslie Hernandez, who is a census organizer with Jolt Initiative. Jolt Initiative is the one and only statewide organization that is dedicated to organizing young Latinos around the power of our voice, our vote, and our stories. So before we start our interview, I just want to mention that this is our second Facebook live stream, and we apologize for any technical issues that we may experience. It's a learning process, but I feel like we're getting better each and every time. So thank you for bearing with us should we encounter any issues. All right, so again, my name is Vanessa Fuentes. Thank you for joining our Del Valley Coalition tonight. And we have with us a special guest, Leslie Hernandez, who is a census organizer for Jolt Initiative. Jolt Initiative is a 501c3 nonprofit that increases civic participation of Latinos to build a stronger democracy and ensure that everyone's voice is heard. Jolt knows that our democracy works best when everyone gets a seat at the table. And that is why Jolt and their leadership is focused on building capacity of millennial Latinos to increase civic participation and mobilize our peers into action. And so we have with us Leslie Hernandez, who is an Aggie and a Houston native and currently working to increase the self-response rate of the 2020 census across undercounted communities for the entire state of Texas. So talk about a big role when you are covering the entire state. Leslie, welcome to our Del Valley community.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and be able to give these resources out into our community, right? And get ourselves educated on everything that's happening.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So, I do want to preface this with, if you have any questions around today's conversations, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We do have a team on hand looking at the questions, and we will be sure to get to a Q&A at the end of our conversation. So today's conversation, we've decided to convene everyone around this very important topic, and it happens every 10 years where we have a nationwide census to count every living person in the United States, regardless of origin, regardless of status. Does not matter. We are all required to fill out the census. And for every person that gets counted, there's federal funding for our schools, transportation dollars for our roads and buses, and then healthcare services are all depending on our census count. So that is just how important it is. Also at stake, we have representation in Congress, in the State House, even on our school board. All of that comes from our census data. So suffice to say, there's a lot on the line, and we felt very strongly that we needed to have a conversation about the census. So during today's talk, we're gonna go over the community benefits of filling out the census and getting counted. We're going to talk about what is on the census and what is not on the census. And we're also going to talk about the process of filling it out. And then also at the end, take any questions that you may have that we did not get to cover for any reason. So thanks again. And we're going to dive right in.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yes. And so our conversation, as I mentioned, is around the census. And we know here in our Del Valle community that we have a long-standing history of being under-resourced, underserved, and often overlooked. And so that is why, Susanna Woody and others decided to come together and start the Del Valle Community Coalition, because we believe strongly in giving voice to our community. And so we thank them for their leadership and bringing us together. And it's really important that we are building that community power. And one way that we build community power is through the census. And so we know just how important a small action of filling out the census is to our community. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation tonight. And also, when we take a look at our community, we know that we have a majority Latino community in Del Valle and a significant immigrant population. And given today's state of events, oftentimes, it is hard for people to understand about what's going on, especially amid a pandemic, and understand, more importantly, the importance of doing it. And so we are considered, a large part of Del Valle is considered a hard to reach, hard to count area. And that is why, another reason why we wanted to have a conversation tonight, to make sure that no one in our community goes uncounted. So Leslie, can you talk us through the community benefits of filling out the census and having an accurate count? I mean, what exactly is at stake?
Sure, for sure. And I get this question asked all the time. The census actually helps with so much. For us to sit here and talk about everything that the census does, we need to be here like all night. But I'm just going to touch on like the basic on like why it's important for our communities, especially like the Latino community, to get counted. There's so much at stake. $675 billion in federal funds are at stake, really, that much money. So if you're about your money, definitely get counted on the census. It helps fund programs like Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, breakfast and lunch programs for schools, community centers, right? Public libraries, public transportations, like it's going to help fund the bus systems. And those are really like resources that our community depend on. So we need to make sure that we're getting counted so that our community has these resources for the next 10 years. And we're prepared for anything that's about to come. And my favorite to talk about, or just my favorite that I've learned as a census organizer, is that census data also helps us allocate how much money is going to be dedicated to the Pell Grants. The Pell Grants that college students or people who are seeking higher education apply through FAFSA. So even the census count helps us with our education, with our healthcare systems. There's so much at stake. Another benefit that your community gains is that everyone is counted, like you mentioned before, regardless of your citizenship status. The census is a civic way and a constitutional way to make sure that if you don't have the privilege to vote in this country, you're getting counted and making your voice heard and taking a stand for your community. This is one civic process that is open to everyone, and we as members of this community need to take advantage of that. My favorite for sure is that the census data also helps take a snapshot of what the country looks like. And if you're not getting counted, it's like you're not here. You know, you're not here for the next, not just this year, but you're not here for the next 10 years. And that also, you know, sometimes messes with the resources that our state is supposed to get. Census data also helps fund emergency relief programs for the state of Texas. Many people don't know this, but it helps fund FEMA. Right now, when we were trying to get better after Harvey or do some recuperating after Harvey, a lot of people were applying for resources from FEMA, and FEMA just didn't have the resources necessary because they used 2010 census data. And in 2010 census data, what do you think happened? We went undercounted and underfunded. So we're applying for these resources that we don't have. So make sure you get counted on the 2020 census to make sure that for the next 10 years, we know how many hospitals we need. We know how many hospital beds we need and how many nurses we need to employ. Local officials also use census data to plan proper evacuation routes.
All good stuff. I mean, if you take a look at our community here in Del Valle, you know, we in the Austin region at large, there is not a full-scale, full-service hospital east of 35, right? I mean, that's a major issue that we confront as a community is healthcare access. So knowing that the census data is tied to where hospitals get built, it makes it even more important that we all step up and feel comfortable getting counted. It is extremely important. And you know, Leslie also mentioned emergency response and how our evacuation maps are contingent on our population counts. And so those are all big, important things for us, especially when we know that many of our neighbors live in flood risk areas and that we have a history of having flood events happen in our community. So what better way to prepare our community for the next big flood than to fill out our census to make sure that we have the funding that we deserve. And that's key, right? Because the funds are going to go somewhere, and whether or not they come to California or to New York, it depends on if we get an accurate count. So it makes it very important that we all fill out our form. So along those lines, Leslie, you know, you talked to us about why it's important and everything that's tied into the data, but can you also now, you know, talk us through, you know, where do I fill out the census? How can I fill it out? What is actually on the census and what is not on the census?
For sure. So the census is actually a lot simpler than you might think. I've gotten a lot of friends who, after they tell me they completed, they're like, that's it. And I'm like, yep, that's it. That's it. So don't be scared. Your information is completely protected by law. Your information is protected under Title 13. And the Census Bureau has no way of sharing that with any other government agency, not the FBI, not the CIA, not ICE. Like, it is illegal for them to share your information. And your information stays protected for the next 72 years. And then there's a lot of different ways that you can fill out your census. You can do it online at 2020census.gov, over the phone, and you can do it online and over the phone in actually 12 different languages. I'm the Spanish hotline. I don't know if any of you guys need it, but the Spanish hotline for you to do your census over the phone is 1-844-468-2020. So en español, si necesitas tomar tu censo sobre el teléfono, el número que puedes llamar es 1-844-468-2020. And you can find all of this information online as well. Puedes encontrar toda esta información sobre el internet también. So I really advise you to check out the internet phase and the phone phase. You can also, every household should have already received a letter from the Census Bureau having the paper format if you haven't completed it. So you can fill that out and send that back. But honestly, that's a little confusing to me. So honestly, the online version, that's what I used, and it literally took me 10 minutes, and I have a household of 4 people. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get counted. Not having internet access shouldn't limit our community. But that's one thing we do have to talk about, right? A lot of our community and the Latino community, not all of us have access to internet. And when the Census Bureau proposed that we were moving the census online, it's great and awesome, but we also have to take into considerations that our community members, 1/5 of Latinos in America locate their internet through their cell phone. So that's a whole other issue to talk about, right?
Yeah.
It really, who needs to be counted, right? Everyone needs to be counted in the household. Kids, senior citizens living in your home, guardians. If you have someone who like couch surfs at your house, they need to be counted. If you have someone who lives in the back little house behind your house, the back garage behind your house, they need to get counted on your census. Literally everyone, doesn't matter what your citizenship status is, doesn't matter your age, everyone. Kids 0 to 5 are usually the most undercounted population, because a lot of people are very confused onto whether kids should be added to the census. But yes, the census affects everyone. Everyone needs to get counted, because if these kids 0 to 5 don't get counted, they miss out on resources for the next 10 years until they're 15, So this is a really good structural and organized way to make sure we have the resources that our community needs for the next 10 years. By 2022, Latinos will become the largest ethnic majority in the state. So getting counted is the perfect opportunity to help raise our community's civic consciousness, so we can shift our mindset and the culture from minority to majority, you know? So with that, I also want to talk about college students. There's been a lot of confusion around that. Does your college student need to be counted on campus? If he stays not on campus, but in the college town, does he need to be counted at the apartment? Due to COVID, if you move back home, like what do you do really, right? So I'm here to clear all of that up. If you are a college student and you live on campus in a dorm, your school is working with the U.S. Census Bureau to enumerate you. So you do not have to get counted in your household. If you live on the dorm and you had to move back home, you will get enumerated at your school, in your dorm. Your school is taking care of it. Now, if you're a college student but don't live on campus, but live in the college town, like in an apartment or a townhome with your roommates, you do have to fill out a census for your household. It's one census per household. So just like you pick a designated driver when you go out, pick a designated census taker if you're in your household, and make sure that person counts every single person in your house. It's really important that a lot of college towns go undercounted as well, because students really don't know where they should be counted on the census, and it only happens every 10 years. So it's not like a thing that people talk about a lot, right? And it's really important that you do get counted in your college town, because you're helping keep those resources there for future college students who move there. So it's really important that you get counted there. If you live, for example, if you live in Houston and you go to the University of Houston and you commute and you live at home, definitely get counted at your house. But it's important that if you live in an apartment in your college town and you move back home because of COVID, that you still fill out your census for the apartment or townhouse in your college town. I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
Okay, I broke down your question. And so like the next part is like what's on the census, right? What is on the census is they're going to ask you the number of people living or staying in your house, apartment, or mobile home as of April 1st. So April 1st happened a couple months ago, a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, right? And that marks that's census day. It just gives like the United States a marker day to say, hey, like the census is dropping this day. Like this is the day that you need to count as of this day who was living here. It's just a marker day, right? So it's going to ask who is living in your house as of April 1st, whether your residence is a house, apartment, or a mobile home. Your telephone number, just in case the Census Bureau needs to follow up with you in case someone gets double counted or you accidentally didn't fill something out. your sex, age, date of birth, Hispanic origin, race, and everyone else's sex, age, date of birth, Hispanic origin, race. So like those 4 things for everyone living in your household, as well as the relationship of those people to you. The relationship of, so like if you're the mom in the household and you're filling out the census, when you count your children, you'd put mother or children, right? So things like that. I also want to highlight what's not going to be asked on the census. I know we mentioned this, but this is really something that is really important that we get through to our community, that there will be no citizenship status question on the census. This already causes really a lot of confusion because the Census Bureau also puts out another survey called the ACS, the American Community Survey, and that one does have a citizenship question. So it's really important that we express that, right? That you're filling out the 2020 census and that it should not have a citizenship question at all. It's not going to ask about your immigration status. It won't ask for your social security number. It won't ask for any permits or licensing, any use of public benefits, nothing about past convictions or criminal background, about your bank account or payment information, and nothing about your employment, income, or wealth information. It's just those 9 things of like basic statistics so that we can keep a snapshot of what our country looks like this 2020 and what our country, and so we can keep track and produce scientific data on what it would look like these next 10 years.
That's right.
And just with that, I kind of want to say that if you need more census information or more specific information, we have an amazing toolkit on our website. You can find it at joltinitiative/census, joltinitiative.org/census. And that we literally have a toolkit with so many different links that you can click that will get you definitely informed on the census. Very and cool. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that was very thorough. Thank you. Thank you for walking us through exactly, the 3 different ways that we can fill out the census, where we can find more information, and really emphasizing that there will not be any question related to citizenship status. Those are all important stuff. So thank you. So now I wanted to very quickly here touch on, now that we know what exactly is at stake with the census and we know how to take it and where to mail it in and or how to take it online or to call, I wanted to go through, okay, what does that look like for our community? How is our community doing? So, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Tina. So on the screen here, we have the most recent census data for our Austin-Travis County response. And you'll see here that nearly 59% of everyone living in Travis County has already responded, which is pretty good, yes, claps. And it's pretty good because as a county, Travis County is actually number 4 in the state when it comes to our response rate. So we are trailing behind Collin County, which leads the state with 66%, and Williamson County. So, our neighbors to the north are beating us. We can't let them win, right? Travis County. So we got to get our census count in. And I also wanted to point out that we are doing better than the state completion rate, which is at 55%. So our 59%, we're doing better than average of the rest of the communities in Texas. Austin as a city is at the top 30 cities for response rate. So we are actually at almost 59%, and Louisville leads the country with 71%. So even though, we have close to 60% of our area filling out the census, I think the important thing we want to emphasize is that a large part of Del Valle is classified as a hard to count, hard to reach area. So I also wanted to drill down a little bit on some of the zip codes in Del Valle and what our specific response rates are within our community's zip codes. So the zip codes that are classified as hard to count neighborhoods are the 78653, 78702, 78721, 787 78741 and 78724. And so for our other areas in Del Valle, 78625 is at a 61% completion rate. 78617 is at 57.1% completion rate, and the 78744 is at it varies in some part of our zip code, which is my home zip code. It stands at 44%, and then some areas are at 61 within our own zip code. So at the end of the day, you know, our Latino community as a completion rate for the entire county, we're at a 54.7, and for our Black community, our hard to count community is at 51.5%. So, you know, while this number looks good, we're actually, you know, you think about it, per our deadline, I feel like we need to do better, right? Because every single person that is not counted, the data shows that means that we're going to lose $1,500 per person. So if you don't count, you know, your niece or nephew or the little one in the house, that's $1,500 that our community stands to lose, both in funding and also representation. So this is all about ensuring that we're going to get the representation we deserve and the funding that we deserve. And I just want to reiterate, that's $1,500 per person that does not get counted. And all right, so last question I have for you, Leslie, is, you know, how has COVID-19 affected our census outreach efforts? Can you share with us the updated timeline?
Yes, for sure. COVID-19 has definitely impacted the 2020 census in all formats. In field operations from the Census Bureau, the way that complete count committees are making sure Texans across the state are getting counted. So just to give you a little bit more background on like the Census Bureau operations, the Census Bureau has, due to COVID and keeping us safe, they have extended the self-response deadline to October 31st. Originally, it was by the end of July, and the enumerators were going to come start knocking on doors in May, but now everything has been pushed back, right? So we have until October 31st to fill out the census to self-respond, and then the field operations, like when the enumerators came out, were postponed. So we're still waiting to hear on like when those are going to start up again. We're waiting for a go. They're still planning on knocking on doors if you haven't completed your census. That's a whole other thing, right? If you don't want enumerators to come knock on your door, make sure you fill out the census as soon as possible so that they don't. They do come knock on your door if they know that you haven't completed your census. So that's happening. They're also setting up like mobile labs in different community hotspots. So they're also this year they're planning to go into hotspots in the community, like a grocery store, where they know there's a lot of people in hard to count, undercounted communities. I'm sorry, so that they can get a big number of the community counted there while they're grocery shopping. You know, so there's definitely different field operations that are being put in place that have been postponed, and you can find all of this on the 2020census.gov website. There's a whole timeline with that. And in order to keep our community safe, we have also shifted the way like we're organizing to get the count out like ourselves. So I don't know if you guys know this, right? But Texas allocated no money to do census education here in the state. So now it falls on Texas, on people like us, like me and Vanessa and you guys in Del Valle, like to make sure that your neighbor gets counted, that you get counted. It's not going to be enough just that we fill out our census. It's going to take you calling your neighbor. It's going to take you calling, if you have any family in the RGV, making sure that they fill out their census too, because they're another also undercounted community. So our communities are at risk. It's going to take all of us to make sure Texas gets the representation and resources it deserves. There's odds stacked against us, right? We have gone undercounted every single census. Like I'm talking about since our country was founded. This is the 24th census our nation hosts, and Latinos have gone undercounted and underfunded for the last 23. So if you're wondering why nothing ever changes, it's because we're never accurately counted on the census. you know, our communities, our immigrant communities live in fear. There's a big mistrust in the government with the Latino community, right? So it takes us to go out into the, people aren't just gonna fill out the census because they saw it on a yard sign, right? We need to tell them, hey, like, this is why it's important. This is why it's happening. Like, you need to do it and you need to tell everyone you know about it. It is crucial, like, especially with everything that's happening right now in the world and in our country. Like, it is crucial more than ever to impose our civic rights and to take advantage of the rights that we have, that our community has, and we have the power to change that. You know, what would happen if you made sure, like, if you're on this live right now, if you made sure that 3 other people completed their census, and what if those 3 other people went and made sure that 3 other people completed their census? You know, what would happen if each person on this live tonight made sure everybody on their block completed their census? So those are the kind of actions that we want to motivate you to do. We want to educate you on the census so that you know why it's important and why it's a cultural shift and why we need the representation and the funding. But we want to also, like, involve you in the civic process, because being civically involved is really important. Our community lacks that a lot of times, and we need to make sure that we are standing up for the under-resourced and the underprivileged. Getting counted, I do have, like, one more thing to say. Getting counted helps us change Texas for the next 10 years, right? Filling out the census will help us change Texas for the next 10 years. And when you change Texas, you change the United States. And that's what I want you guys to understand. We have a lot of power here in Texas. Like I said, 2022, Latinos become the majority. It is time to build that political power and you know, start electing people who represent us and put forth policies that respect our families. And when you change Texas, you change the world. So I really hope this motivated you to get informed about the census and tell everyone you know about it.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Leslie. That's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, you said it perfectly. That is how important everything that is at stake with the census, and how why we as a community have an active role in filling it out, not for only for ourselves, but to ensure that everyone around us also fills it out. So real quick, you know, I do want to remind everyone that if you have a question, please pop it in the live stream and we will get to it. We will take questions from the audience here shortly. I see several have already come in. And so while I give everyone a little bit of time just to add any more questions before we start our Q&A, Leslie, is there any final remarks, any kind of imparting call to action wisdom you want to share with us?
Yes, so many calls to action. First of all, thank you for joining. This is the first step, you know, getting yourself educated so that you can become a leader in your community. And my call to action is to spread the word. Literally, a simple post or a retweet or sharing a post that you see about the census helps spread awareness, especially now that a lot of us are at home and are using this digital space to communicate and to work. So make sure you, again, like I said, make sure you call up your tia or tío who lives in the RGB or in another undercounted community across Texas to make sure they're completed their census too. There's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different things that you can do in your community itself. If you're an artist, ask someone if you can borrow their wall to paint a mural about the census. See if there's different actions in your community where people go and, like, door knock or phone banking opportunities. Don't forget to check out our toolkit at joltinitiative.org/census. It has amazing links that will definitely help you. And if you can, right there on that page, help us out with the pledge. You're just pledging that you're pledging to participate in your census, and that actually helps us fund our programs and make sure that we're reaching other undercounted communities who also need the information. And if you do want to hear more about that, if you do want to hear more about Jolt Initiative, you can check the box there that will be on the pledge card. But with that, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the space. And I hope you guys know a little bit more about the census now.
Yes, we are informed with knowledge and ready to fill it out.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have some questions that have come in. A lot of people are having issues with the race question that is asked on the census. So
Yes.
can you talk us through what our Latinx community should pick when it comes to the race question?
This is so hard. This is one question that I feel very strongly about as a Latina woman here in Texas. The Census Bureau, it's really important that we highlight that the Census Bureau has a lot of work to do before the 2030 census, because this question is very confusing for our community, right?
Mhm.
I do want to say that the reason that, so there's a race and ethnicity question, right? And the race question is if you are, it asks, specifically asks if you're of Latino or Hispanic race, right? Um, and the reason it did that is because the reason the Census Bureau did that is because the Latino community self response is so bad that, not so bad, but they've struggled to get the self response from the Latino community, that they think that that one separate question helps identify that population. But to me, that's actually more confusing, because then you move on to the next question and it's about your ethnicity, and it doesn't have an option for Latino Hispanic people. It has like Black, white, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, right? And it doesn't have an option for the Latino community. So you have to check whether you're white, Black, or thing. And like, I can't tell you what to put. Like, you check in whatever you feel that you identify with. But I definitely don't feel white. I don't feel like I'm treated like a white person in the society. And if you go into the Census Bureau, if you go to the Census Bureau and do your research, the Census Bureau actually classifies Latinos under American Indian and Alaskan Native. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Um, yeah. Because I mean, we are, under my theory and like what I've studied, like Latinos are a native people.
Yep.
We are native people of this land. Um, so that's what I marked under my census. And I'm Mexican and Guatemalan, so I put Aztec and Mayan. Of that Indian race, and because that's where I want, that's what I identify with the most. So I can't tell you what to put. If you want to put in other and write in the, because Latinos, we identify our ethnicity from the country that we come from, right? So if you're comfortable with writing other and like the country that you're from or that your family originates from, like I can't influence, I can only point you in the direction, but I can't influence you to make your decision. So it's whatever you identify with. But to answer your question, Latinos are categorized under American Indian, Alaska Native on the ethnicity question.
Okay. All right. So our next question is about when is the deadline?
To fill out your census, to self-respond where you can do it yourself, is October 31st. But don't wait, like why wait? It literally takes 10 minutes. And the sooner you respond, the less they mess with you. Because if you don't respond, they'll send you another. I'm sure many people have gotten more than one letter from the Census Bureau here, and it's because if you don't respond, they keep on sending you stuff and they keep on sending you stuff. So the sooner you fill it out, the sooner they'll leave you alone. If by the time the enumerators start doing field work and you still haven't completed your census, they will come knock on your door. um, it's also important that you complete it as soon as possible, because a lot of different organizations are making actually interactive maps where we're tracking the self-response rates of different communities. And so
Mhm.
we're able to see, okay, like this community has this much completed, this, how kind of like how you just showed about Del Valle, right? The statistics. So the sooner people get counted, the more we can like qualitative data that, make it data and see which areas we need to go focus more on.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like you said, it's 9 questions, 9 minutes. I mean, come on, like, unless you want someone knocking at your door,
yeah,
there will
yeah.
be someone who will knock at your door if you don't fill it out,
Yeah. And like we have the power. Like that's the power. Those 10 minutes that you're gonna spend on it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
we don't
So,
have to wait for someone to come and take it for us.
so we have a few more questions. Is there a fine associated with not filling out the census?
Right. That's a very good question. There is no monetary fine. They will not charge you for not completing the census, but like I said, they do like harass you until you do. And it's your civic duty. Like it's actually, it's written in the Constitution. It's under Section 1, Article 2. that every person living in the United States, that the United States must host a count of the population of the United States every 10 years, and that every person living in the United States, no matter their citizenship status, needs to be counted on the census. And again, like the census data helps with the political power and the representation, but as a scientist, like it also helps with science data. Like people use 2020 census data to, when you ever if you've ever written like an essay, you need sources for your essay, right? When I was an undergrad and writing stuff, a lot of the sources came from the US Census Bureau. So like they're used as statistics. They're used as statistics to see like how many hospitals we need, or how many nurses we need to employ, or how many Latinos are living under the poverty rate across Texas. So it really does help with advancing our data and our technology. So
Yeah, and like you said, even though there's not a fine associated with not taking the census, I mean, just think like that's $1,500 that's associated with your name. And if you don't fill it out, then you are losing out on $1,500. That could go to your roads, that go to your parks, your hospitals. Like these are things that you do participate and have some form of interaction in, and you're only going to lose if you don't fill out the census. So next question, how can we help get the word out?
Good question. And my favorite. Getting the count out, attending things like this, literally sitting there one Saturday for 2 hours, going through your contact list on your phone and calling everyone, or shooting a text to everyone on your contact list, asking them if they've gotten involved in the census. Check out your different organizations. I don't know if the Del Valle Community Coalition has like a census initiative, or like what you guys, if you guys are going to do anything. But there's like definitely a lot of different organizations that are doing a lot of things. Check out Jolt Initiative. Come volunteer with us. We're doing census phone banking to zip codes that have gone undercounted. We have a census ambassador program where they phone bank 2 hours a week or more at their own leisure, whatever they want to do. But then we also meet bi-weekly to digitally organize, and we come up with digital actions. Like right now, we're organizing a 2020 census virtual art show for our census poster contest that we organized in January. So there's many ways that you can help get the count out. It's just however much you want to help. Like I said, retweeting something, hosting a watch party for this, like for this, that's getting the count out. If you're an, I'm a very
video.
Share it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a very artistic person, and I think you make movement and change through art and storytelling. So if you're creative, if you're an artist, like literally ask someone who has a very nice wall if you can paint a mural on why it's important to you that we get counted on the 2020 census. There's really a number of ways to get the count out.
Oh, love it. So good.
Yes.
All right, so we have our last question that's come in, and it is any recommendation or guidance on multiracial people who are filling out the census. So we have multiracial Austinites, people who are living in Del Valle, they're filling out the census. What do you recommend that they put in for race and ethnicity?
I'm so happy that you guys asked this question, because this is definitely one that we have to touch on and that I completely like passed over my head. But yes, it's really important. Like I said before, the Census Bureau has a lot of work to do before 2030. I'm going to cut to the chase and say that you need to pick one, because the Census Bureau literally only lets you pick one. So if you go and write that, so for example, like if I was Mexican and Salvadorian and I wrote Mexican and Salvadorian, like I have to pick one, because if you don't, the Census Bureau will pick it for you. Yeah. So or like for example, like it's just so very situational. Like for example, if you're an Afro Latino, right? You could be a Latino and you could, I don't mean to speak for the Afro Latino community, but identify as Black, so there's different, it's just very situational. If you're multiracial, like that's like I feel like that's how you, if you're Latino and another race, I feel like you can get away with it like that. But if you are like, you know, black and white, I would choose one, because they literally only let you choose one. And if you don't pick one, they choose for you. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
the
we have some work to do before
yeah,
2030 is to
yeah,
ensure that our census
bless
is
you.
reflective of the people who live here.
Exactly. And this should, you know, like, I'm really embarrassed as a census organizer. Like, I'm embarrassed to say this. Like, how do we want our community to come and fill out the census? And it already has all these issues, right?
Yeah.
So, but we need to understand it's a work of art. They need our input for sure, obviously, to get it right. So I hope this encourages you to fill out the census and get involved and question the US Census Bureau and be like, yo, like, why is this a question? That makes no sense. This is not reflective of what America looks like, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Like,
we had another question come in. What happens if you don't answer all of the questions?
they do need you to fill out the census, all of the questions. So that's why they ask you for your phone number. So that in case you do miss something, the Census Bureau can follow up with you. So like if you go and you miss one question, they do like como se dice, it's that one word where they like revise quality control.
Oh, okay.
They do quality control of census responses, and they will reach out to you if you miss one. And if this was like any other census year, um if it gets to the point where the enumerator has to come and like ask you the question that you didn't answer and you're not home, the Census Bureau enumerator actually has the ability to ask your neighbor for the answer. And I'm sure you don't want your neighbor answering a question about you, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? That's crazy that that can happen. So I would fill out the census as completely as you can. If you don't want them bothering you or following up with you, of course, remember you have to choose between one or the other. If not, the census picks for you. So yeah.
I know. It's like we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for being here and joining us and giving us lots of good information, sharing the importance of taking the census, filling it out, and why it matters. We really appreciate your time today. Appreciate all the work that Jolt initiative is doing to get the word out and to ensure an accurate count. Thank you so much. For our Del Valle community, thank you for tuning in, for educating yourselves, and for engaging with this virtual live stream. We appreciate it. Know that if you have any recommendations on other topics we should cover, just let us know. We are, our mission and our focus is engaging and informing our community. That we know that knowledge is power, and that we want to build that collective power within our community through our voice. Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We will post very soon our next Facebook Live, which is going to be on tenants' rights, featuring a very special guest that I think everyone will be interested in to hear from. Details to come soon. And thank you so much for your night tonight. Again, my name is Vanessa Fuentes. I'm a member of the Del Valle Community Coalition. This education outreach event was hosted by the Del Valle Community Coalition and the Del Valle Blast. Thank you, Tina Byram, for providing technical support, and to Trustee Susanna Woody for all of your help behind the scenes. We really appreciate it. Good night, everyone.
Night. Get counted.
Yes. Contamos todos.
Contamos. Bye.
Bye.